Welcome to the Construction Brothers Podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Campbell, and with me, like he is every week, my brother, Eddie Campbell.
What's up, Tyler?
Not much, Eddie. Well, this week, the planning fallacy. Eddie, you informed me of something while we were getting set here. Micah was gracious enough to, tweak mics and, move rooms and do all this stuff. But you're standing here slurping down your smoothie and you look at me and you said, yeah, man, I'm not really feeling that well. And then comes out, you're dealing with some sort of viral thing.
I think.
I'm a sitting duck is essentially what I'm trying to convey here. Mike, is there a statute of limitation that you know about? It's like, all right, it's got to be like this number of hours without some. I feel like we learned this in COVID, dude. If you're sick, don't come to work. What's wrong with you?
COVID's over. COVID's over. We left that in 2020, man. Back to new rules, old rules.
You see this jerk?
I thought we weren't going to get political, and here we are, five seconds into it.
Hey, does anybody want to talk about masks? I don't really want to talk about that. Hey, I thought you were going to come in on an intro about the ice cream that I ate, and then you come at me about the virus I may or may not have.
No. I wasn't going to fat shame you. I wasn't going to do that. Sometimes you just need a carton of ice cream.
It was most of the way empty, but I did finish the carton. I told him I was feeling sick, so I dipped the spoon in, one time, and I thought it's a clean spoon. I'll go, so I'm good. But then the second scoop committed me. I was in it. So I finished the carton.
As you do, I mean.
Why wouldn't you?
If you go past more than one, you have to finish it.
You have to finish the whole carton. That's no matter how large the carton.
That is the law, according to the rules. That is how this works. All right, Micah, enough shenanigans. Tell us who you are, what you do. Tell us about being a scheduler.
Yeah, I mean, holy smokes, where to start? So currently, I'm a schedule and integration manager for Intel. And so what I do is help deliver the projects we have on time. And I do that by working with our internal team for pre-construction planning, making sure the permitting, designs, funding is all kind of in order. And then as you kick off a project, working with some of our design builders and general contractors on how they schedule and how they're going to go manage their plans and scheduling. Prior to Intel, I worked at Google for 7 years, helping to build their data center planning and construction team. And then prior to that, I had a bunch of random scheduling jobs. Like I worked at a shipyard, a nuclear facility, and a couple other ones. But yeah, it's basically my background.
Any Mayfield ice cream facilities, anything like that in the past, or just tech, boring old tech,
No, well, so two of my favorite projects I worked on was building a ferry boat in Seattle. So the large 144 car ferries, you drive on it, they drive in through the sound. They're actually really cool experiences because you can park your car. It's like a 2-hour experience. You can go grab a beer, stand up on the deck. It's like beautiful Olympic mountain ranges. But ship construction is just totally crazy. I remember my first day on the job, we go into the dry dock of some frigate or cruiser, I don't know. And there's this massive boat and we just go stand underneath it. And the only thing holding the boat up is wooden blocks. And I'm like, even my dad, when he, knocked up his 57 Chevy had some mechanical thing and then the wood blocks, right? And here we are, just wood blocks. And then another one was tearing up a plutonium finishing plant. And so back in the day, when they made the nuclear bombs, they had to process the uranium and they basically created hockey pucks. I helped tear down a facility that helped build that, but it had gone through all these generational waves of, they had it in the 50s and they basically made it go dormant and they brought it back in the 70s, 80s and they went dormant again. And it was just the trippiest thing because you'd go in and it reminded you of a James Bond lair from one of the older movies, with all the knobs and dials. And there's just so many things that could kill you there. The radiation, the arsenic, the beryllium, back in the day, I was like, oh yeah, cool, whatever. Let's go for a walk. And now I'm like, why did I should have just, that's the one time I should have put my policy of I got to get out in the field and see what's going on with the job aside for my own personal safety.
Well, all right, that's an eclectic past. I mean, really,
Yeah,
if we're-
I guess so.
that's really interesting.
I have a question. Like
Okay.
when you work on a job that has plutonium and anywhere in the vicinity, like how many Doc Brown from Back to the Future
God,
jokes
yeah,
do
I
you
mean,
have to integrate with that whole thing? That's got to be a part of it.
Yeah.
121 gigawatts worth.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Very nice
yeah.
answer. I love that.
It was gigawatts, I thought.
Gigawatts.
It's
Gigawatts.
gigawatts.
It was gigawatts. Yeah,
Is it hot?
1.21 gigawatts. That's it. 1.21 gigawatts.
So that was at Google when we crossed 1.21, I'll use your terminology, gigawatts of capacity we delivered. They gave us this like kind of Back to the Future inspired, type of like, I don't know, medal or medallion or something like that. So I actually more Back to the Future references at Google than there was at the plutonium finishing plant.
That's unique. That's unique. So, all right. Similar to detailing, it feels like a lot of people kind of like fell into the detailing career, and it kind of seems to be that way with scheduling too, right? Like people just kind of fall into it. Did you just kind of happen into the career of a scheduler? How did that happen?
No, I mean, in kindergarten, I was definitely like, when you grow up, I'm gonna schedule projects around the globe. And then there's this really nice tract that just I would say very, I don't know. I mean, y'all are the detailing professionals. And so I don't know a ton about, those experiences, but it sounds very similar. And so there is no university degree for scheduling. You can't go to a college and go to get a degree. And, I'm a little bit, I went and researched it one day. I went to every single construction, not every single, but a ton, like 10, 20, 30 construction management degrees, University of Michigan, University of Washington, Washington State. I just went around going through their curriculum. They don't have it. What they do have is maybe one course in their construction management degree that would be something like project controls. And then every once in a while, you'll find a scheduling one. And so you don't have a university track to it. And so it just sits in this weird nebulous area of project controls. And yeah, oftentimes, like for me, I was working at a credit collection company in the recession. I was calling up companies and basically shutting them down because they couldn't pay their bills because it was the recession. Like, hey, we sent you 10,000 pounds of borax. You owe us, $20,000, something like that, right? And the guy's like, I can't pay you. And I'm like, I don't know what I want to do, but this is horrible and I feel horrible. And so I ended up applying to a job where I grew up in the Tri-Cities, and a guy calls me. I was like, hey, you want to do construction scheduling? I was like, yeah, how much does it pay? And it was like 15, 20K more than I was making in Seattle. And I immediately, yeah, sign me up, whatever, we'll figure it out. And that's the stories that I hear time and time again with my peers. They're teachers. They come from the trades. They just happen to chance fall into this job, and there you go. And they make a career out of it.
What kind of talents do you need to be a good construction scheduler?
The beauty of the career is there's so many different offshoots that it offers itself up to a lot of different people. So I would say initially, just a general curiosity will probably get your foot in the door and be okay at it. Like, you just generally curious about things. Like for me, I'm like, how is that built? Like, why do we build it that way? What do you do with that? And people are like, at some time, like, can you stop with the questions? But having that general curiosity. And then as you start to develop in your career, depending where you want to go, you can go a very analytical route. So maybe you really like numbers, data crunching, not really like people all that much. Or you can go in different routes, and you can go more to probably the owner's side or at executive level or like a director of planning, where you do take some of those soft skills in and develop people skills. I used to say construction, like you need to have a general understanding of construction, but it's such a hot job market now, and it's a bonus, but I don't think it's necessary for people. I think if you're genuinely curious, you can pick it up and get into it. And then also there's avenues in scheduling where you're just a database manager. So you don't actually need to know anything about construction. You just sign up for the Primavera courses, the Oracle courses, learn how to manage a database, and there you go. And you work for a big top 10, Whiting Turner company, and you manage their Primavera database. So it's just so many angles and verticals that I don't think there's one thing or two or three traits that would make someone super successful in it.
It's interesting because, like, on our side. Like, so detailing, a lot of times you get the opportunity to be the GOAT, but seldom the hero. And scheduling, I'm going to wager, is kind of similar in that you probably don't hear about the good job you do nearly as much as the bad job you do. So, I mean, is that pretty fair? Like, pretty similar?
Yeah. I mean, the good jobs have to have such larger impact to always offset the bad jobs. And so I'm always looking at it when I'm working on a larger program, like where can I just deliver smashed out of the park impact, millions of dollars of savings, because it's going to offset then that one project that misses that one milestone, that like is the fire drill of the day that makes it look like this is completely out of control and a catastrophe. Yeah, so you're totally right. Planning in itself and scheduling is very hard to do and be accurate at, and it's often not, and that creates a whole nother atmosphere and vibes to it that you got to have something else going on for you usually to then offset the flack you're going to catch for stuff that happens in just the project that's out of your control.
Imagine that, and then how's the post-COVID market treating you these days? Like, how's it to try to schedule things now?
Yeah, good luck buying a generator. I don't know if you guys got any laying around, but if you do, it's time to make some money. I mean, we can go down a super big rabbit hole on scheduling and different methodologies. But I guess what I would say is, and there's a post I put up on LinkedIn with this graphic, there's this kind of continuum we're looking at now in scheduling where you go back to like the 50s and the 60s, and that's where most of the algorithms were created that is scheduling today. It's like the CPMs of the world, the last planners of the world, line of balance, probably some other stuff, that's all created and they were just doing it on a piece of paper. And then they transitioned it to a piece of software. And that's, in the 80s and even up into probably the 2010s, where they just took what was created then and they just put it in a piece of software so they could do more, and they slap a fancy UI on it. Now we're starting to transition to a different era where the compute power and the algorithms that are available for use are just, on a whole nother level, on a whole nother plane. And so when you start looking at how to deliver schedules on time, you can only take that, I'll call it that, I used to have a 1985 Camaro Z28. You can only make that 1985 Z28 Camaro so fast and so good and so fuel efficient before you've topped out. But now there's this whole other world of stuff that's being unlocked and capabilities that's there that really is going to change the game and how we go out and schedule. And again, this is the crazy part about this stuff too. There's no college degrees for it either. This is, you could dive into it right now and just go immerse yourself in it and be an expert in it. And I don't know, maybe 6 months, a year, and just go out and then apply it to jobs or pitch it to companies to go do.
Well, let's hear some of the new innovations, man. Like you'd mentioned, like there's a lot of new stuff that's coming online for this. What are some of those things? What are those new exciting things that you're seeing?
Yeah, and this is where, I think we'll have a lot of cross pollination with detailing. So there's two streams I would look at. You have capture, so going out into the field and capturing progress. And basically there's several companies that do this nowadays. There's the Doxels, the Build Dots, the Reconstructs. You slap on a 360 camera. If you have a ton of money, you can put on a LiDAR backpack, and you walk out into the field and it will capture exactly where that job's at. And then it'll compare it back to your previous scan and then back to your design. And so you can go out and say, from just a pure scheduling standpoint, this is exactly where we are. Now, that is super interesting, and it just can, you can run with that as far as you want. Then the other stream is, I'll call it like advanced compute. This is where we're starting to get the large language models. We're starting to apply the ML curves to risk analysis, taking millions and millions or hundreds of thousands of projects and millions of lines of schedules, and then starting to find what is actually delayed and not delayed. So those are two things you can both get into. And then I think eventually those two streams will meet again, because the golden goose, I would say, of it is, how can I take a set of drawings, like you go detail it, and then I just plug it into a computer program and it gives me a schedule. And that schedule is backed by data and by logic. and I don't do anything. And then a human just optimizes it based on something that maybe the computer can't see. So those are the two big ones that I see right now.
So capturing progress, comparing, status and all that stuff, and then advanced compute, machine learning. I like kind of using that term. That's exactly what we're talking about. That's immediately where my brain was kind of going to. I was curious if you were going to go there. So we can dive into those a little bit more, but I kind of want to hear pains. Like that's something that I feel like a lot of times we'll hear from a bunch of people in industry, just kind of their pains. Like what are the common pain points that you feel on projects? I know you got to have thick skin. That's for sure one thing. But aside from that, like what issues and things come up that you just wish they could be fixed?
Yeah. I think my biggest one would be just finish the design. That's probably my biggest pain. Doing design in parallel and fluid design. I oftentimes when I look at it from a math standpoint, it doesn't make sense because people aren't really great at outweighing, long-term gain versus short-term result. And that's probably why you had that tub of ice cream earlier. Because in the short term is very gratifying, but long term we'll see. Maybe you're a little sensitive to dairy. Maybe you're on a weight loss plan. Who knows, right? I'm not going.
Moment on the lips, a lifetime on the hips.
Exactly. And so that's one just from a delivery standpoint. If you look at a 12-month project and you're thinking you want to go deliver that as fast as possible, there's a 30%, you probably have a 30% delay in there somewhere, right? You probably plus or minus 30%. At least that's what the cost estimators do. So 30% of 12, I don't know, what is that, like 4 months, if you put that 4 months in the front end and just said, no, our project delivery timeline is probably more like, 16 months, and we're going to spend 4 months to get as much design thought through and work through as possible, my suspicion would be that you could actually go deliver that project then faster than 12 months. But people don't, it's really hard to get through that. I think that'd be one of them. And then if I was going to offer some other ones up just in the career of scheduling, I think people don't look at it as a career they can go into and either hop out of or have this great vertical climb. It's a great career. It offers you, like I mentioned before, all these different opportunities. It's very well paying. You can get 150, 250K per year salary pretty quickly compared to other careers. And people just don't consider it. Like if you're in the trades right now and you're an electrician or a pipe fitter and you're kind of burning out on it, but you're looking, how do I get in the office? And you're thinking, well, I got to go to school for 4 years and then this and that and spend all this money. I don't think you do. I think you could transition and get into the office faster. And then the last one would be, taking it a little bit to a higher level is I see a lot of the top 50 GCs don't actually have planning and scheduling programs. It's still viewed as an owner's requirement. It's still a little bit of a dog and pony show. And they could really be on the forefront advancing a lot of this stuff, a lot of this innovation and actually creating a separation between them and their competitors. And you just don't see it, And so I'd probably say those three are probably what I would say is annoying about scheduling. But, I could go on forever.
Yeah, I'm sure. I want to dig into that last one, though. Like not having scheduling or anything in-house. Like, okay, I had no idea. For one, that a lot of GCs don't have that sort of thing in house. So go into that a little bit more. Like why wouldn't they have it in house? For
most jobs they do, the planning and scheduling can probably be done by a project manager or superintendent combined. You got to start climbing up the level of complexity to where you'd really want to bring in a planner or scheduler. Think about maybe like a $50 million university project. I'm pretty sure a couple of people could sit down in Microsoft Project and hack out a good enough schedule, So then anytime you add overheads to a general contractor, because planning and scheduling, if they don't see the value in it, it's a cost to their project. And then it comes out as a negative thing on their bottom line. They're not making as much money on the back end. And so I think that's a big piece of it is they just don't see the value of it. And maybe I'm just this crazy person who sees a ton of value here, but I may be wrong. I'm totally could be wrong. And so I think a lot of them just don't see the value in it. And that's why you're not going to hire a staff of people to go do it. And so, yeah, I think that's probably, if I would put it on it, it's a value question.
What I'm hearing kind of underneath the advocacy for scheduling as a valid career path is that we're wanting in the industry when it comes to the number of schedulers that are out there. So, I mean, is that what you're seeing? Like, are you seeing like we need more people in scheduling? We don't have enough people doing this.
Yeah, I mean, I go on LinkedIn and every week I try and find 3 interesting jobs to post in a little newsletter I send out to people. It doesn't take me more than 2 minutes, and I can pick any region in the world and I will find 3 interesting scheduling jobs on LinkedIn in 5 to 10 minutes. It's that hot of a market. So that it just, to me, and so I don't have a ton of numbers to back this up, but I mean, just off of that, I got to imagine there's a large need for schedulers out there in the world. And there's going to continue to be. I mean, I think you're getting bigger, more complex projects out there in the world. And at some point in time, you know, you're going to innovate in your cost space. You're going to innovate in your design space. Then you got to innovate in your planning and scheduling space, like to continue to provide value. And so there's loads of jobs out there at all different levels, all different companies.
What are you seeing as far as like bridging? Like we talk about 4D and BIM, like adding schedule and cost into models. What do you know there? Like what's being done in that realm?
Yeah, my favorite thing is when a GC comes in and gives you the pitch of how they're going to build their job. And they always say, 5D, we got this covered. And then they show you this picture of how it's going to be built. They click the video and, you know, and it's like, and it's all built. And they're like, cool. You're like, so what would I use it for? And then like you dive in the detail, like where'd the schedule from? Like, oh yeah. So we basically took the construction schedule, we hacked it apart to tie to the model because we haven't figured out how to do this. And it's not an actual usable tool. It's just kind of visual representation. You're like, oh, great. Like, that's what I see a lot of. And the unfortunate side, I think that's where the future is. I just think the interface needs to get much easier for us to be able to go do it. And so I think that's where I mentioned the visual-based progressing. You know, just making it easier for people to connect the schedule to the model. Like that is a really, really hard thing to do. There's an infinitely more amount of detail in a schedule than you'd ever want in your plan. And so how do you bridge that gap? And so to me, that's, I think, the benefit of it. And I think to do that, you have to finish your design. So going back to another point, it's really hard to go create a lot of these systems without a fully baked design. You know, not fully baked, but, you know, getting down there pretty, you know, level 4-ish something, right? Maybe just before detailing or something. And so, yeah, that's where I see the land of it. And once you can merge those, that's, I think, you're going to see a lot easier optimizations. You have a lot more tricks and tools in your tool bag. So maybe you switch to time and material contracts. You know, maybe there's like a whole bunch of other levers that you can get into, but I just haven't seen it done well, I guess.
It's interesting. It's something that people like to beat their chest about and act like, you know, oh yeah, we're doing. But it is interesting when you get kind of to the grassroots level of construction activity, how many things are a little bit of smoke and mirrors. You know, they're a marketing ploy, dare we say. So, because that's been talked about for, I mean, a decade. I don't even know how far back you started hearing, well, 3D, okay, we got 4D or 5D, you know, so. But I haven't seen it effectively brought to bear on any projects that I'm a part of where it's integrated into.
I'm gonna pull the dummy card here, like kind of clarify those statements for me. Okay, the 4D schedule BIM. What are we talking about here?
Basically, obviously you've got the 3 dimensions of a model, right? Yeah. So you're getting that graphical interface and you get to see what the building looks like. But then over and above that, you start baking in information about the schedule and cost of the things that are graphically represented in that model.
Got it. Okay.
And that would be like, so in some sense, you would be able to construct and deconstruct a building in a modeled environment, kind of like the animation, which would be what you're you would see, right? The GC walks in with an animation of the schedule and that model being built up.
And then the ultimate idea is that, okay, it's built in a virtual environment. And so if it stops because it finds a clash or something like that, we can detect it. We can, figure it out from there. And it doesn't have ramifications in our schedule.
Yeah, but...
Oh, that is a dog and pony show, 100%.
To Micah's point, there's a big difference between bringing an animation in the front end of the job and having this be a part of a process in a job. It's actually being used to put work in place.
It's not a process. It's like Inkscape.
Well, you end up in this final hurdle, which I think is the most important, is someone actually going to use it out in the field to go do their work, and that's because at the end of the day, you're looking at this from you have the 5D, 60, 70, I think it goes to 70 with quality or something, but you have this model, but is that electrical superintendent going to use that same system to go out and plan and schedule and execute his work or her work? And to me, that's what needs to change. And because if you think about scheduling, let's get into the meat and potatoes of a schedule. If you and I, us three, are going to create a schedule, I'd be like, hey, we're building a warehouse. Eddie, how long does the steel take? And you would go, well, I think it probably takes about 25 days. And I would put that in. I just put steel in 25 days. So there actually is no direct connection to the physical scope. It is just your interpretation of what that scope you think is, and then you apply a duration to it. And I would say that is probably over 80% of scheduling that's done in the world, maybe even 90. And so then when you have that, you have this huge problem called the planning fallacy, where people are horrible at planning. And it's just massive bias. And if you're just using an interpretation of scope with a subject matter expert's opinion, you're going to end up with a high fluctuation of variability of when that activity is really going to finish. And then what's it's going to be able to provide for you. So I just provided you one activities example. Now, on some of the last couple of jobs I've worked on, they have 10, 20, 30,000 activities in their schedule. So start to multiply that effect out over it, and you can kind of see the chaos that's created by scheduling. The flip side of that is, how do you attack the planning fallacy? And there's three big things that people talk about. Reference class forecasting, so it's benchmarking. So, hey, 25 days to do steel. Do we have a job that was close to this tonnage and how long the day was, right? There is, when you get into it, there is also essentially what it ends up being pole planning. It's intention-based planning, where you get into it and you say, okay, my intention is I'm going to go deliver this room in this set of time by this way, and I'm in a group, so there's social pressure, and there's the intention for it. And the last one is just breaking down something that's really large into smaller scopes, right? And so that gets blended in with the intention, but you can do that as well. Saying, oh, a 25-day steel activity, well, how long is the main beams versus these sticks going to take? And then you break it down and see if it rolls back up. But that is a whole lot to, one, me talk about, and then two, someone to go execute in the field, when the dude is probably, the dudette is probably just sitting there being like, hey man, I just want to go out and put this steel up today. I don't want to deal with the 5D model or the plan. I know how this is done. I just want to go execute my work. And so that's where the bridge needs to happen. This needs to get easier for people to go use on a daily basis and really help drive and educate their work.
That's the planning fallacy. We're getting into some fun theory now. Mm-hmm. I love this because we're getting kind of nerd level now. This is good stuff.
You always think the best of yourself.
Oh yeah.
Right. So yeah. I'm gonna throw our brother under the bus. Good old Andy. I was helping him build something in his actual bus one day. And his wife was like, how long do you think it's going to take? And he's like, like 45 minutes. 45 minutes. She looked at her son and she was like, what do we say? It's like, add 2. It's like, all right, this is an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, something like that. How long did it take? About 2 hours. Because internally you're thinking, I can knock it out in that amount of time. But you're not thinking about all of the other little layers and little things that can come up. So yeah, planning fallacy, man, I saw that in action with our brother.
Well, the metrics-based way, if I think about, I'm trying to prescribe a metric to a time frame. I'm trying to figure out how long it takes to produce a ton of steel and how long it takes to erect a ton of steel, or how much, square footage of concrete flat work or whatever. Like, you're trying to associate a metric to a time frame, but that's all nuanced. I mean, you mentioned even the amount of day I get. I mean, the average rainfall in an area, I would imagine, like, you could probably go until you are just mad, like just trying to pick through and go, oh, well, that wouldn't be accurate because of this. That wouldn't be accurate because of that. So
yeah. Your response is perfect. And whenever I sit down with a team and I talk them through this, it's the first thing they bring up is, where does this stop? Like, how far do we go? And what I always like to bring up is like, okay, so we had one person guessing 25 days for all of that tonnage and steel there. All I'm asking for is to bring something else to the table. Like, I'm not asking for an advanced meteorological weather pattern report and a 3,000 year study of concrete. Can you pull out maybe like 5 projects that were close and we can ballpark this? Because the ranges we're talking about, I'm not talking in minutes and I'm not talking in hours. And oftentimes I'm not even talking in weeks. 20 days is a month. Do other jobs roughly run a month? You know what I mean? And so that's where there is a continuum where you can get process crazy and you can go super Frederick Taylor, I think his name was, who did the first, pre-Henry Ford studies. You can go that route. But eventually it's obviously going to become an overhead burden. The operational cost of doing it's not too much. But what I find is we're just so far on the other scale that I'm like, what are we even talking about here? Like, you haven't even pulled 5 projects up to look at, is this reality or is this not? You haven't looked at implementing a last planner system or broken this down into smaller steps. So, like, maybe just take some baby steps here. And then if it gets to be too much, we'll just pump the brakes. But you got to take that first step forward, or we just keep the same thing we had.
See, I mean, that's speaking from somebody who's in a seat of working with a serial builder too, right? Like, that's super important, for Intel, right? You guys are doing a ton of different things right now. Having that data to influence your decision making down the road is going to be huge. So, like, are you finding people resistant of surrendering that info to you? Like, I mean, I guess you just said yes, but in a way, like, are there some people that are just like, I just don't have the time, whatever, it's going to be this time, and, stick their finger in the air and hope for the best?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, it's all the time. I mean, you can only contractually state so much, and then you can only enforce so much. Your contract isn't this thing where you write it down, then all of a sudden someone jumps up and be like, yes, I will do that. And so, yeah, I mean, it happens all the time. And so this is where it gets into more of a convincing how this is going to benefit them and more of a sales pitch. And to me, it's still just really strange. It's really, really strange to me that we live in a world where we have these companies, Intel included, lots of companies, and they've built for years and years and years. And you would think we would have down to the bolt this just plethora of data that we could leverage to then go inform our future projects. But it's pretty crazy that it really doesn't exist out there and it isn't used. And if it does exist, it was built for a cost purpose, not a schedule and planning purpose. And so that's one of the ones where I just sometimes wake up in the morning, I'm like, yeah, why isn't it that way? And then I get crazy ideas in my mind of, well, why don't we create a federal database of this information? Because if you want to put on your tinfoil hat with me for a second, construction data is the future. It's the gold. It's the thing that's going to create potentially, because we've talked about before, a lot of the stuff that is brought up as innovation isn't innovative. They've been prefabbing facilities forever. They've been doing 5D forever. Pole planning's been around forever. Scheduling, this P6's been around forever. These things aren't new. They're just not being applied. And so where is the solution at? I mean, I'm thinking it's potentially in this data set. We do government-funded federal projects, billions and billions of dollars worth every year. Why don't we leverage those projects to create the data set that then anybody can use? If you really thought that, building projects on time was better for people's mental health, I think it is. I don't know. Have you guys ever been on a project that's late?
Oh, I'm always happy on projects. I don't know what you're talking about, man.
Yeah. So late projects affect people's mental health. They affect the environment because you have to spend times expediting and doing things inefficiently. They're costly, they're over budget. So if you just look at it from this giant worldview of like, it's good to deliver projects on time, well, then why don't we have this data set that's helping us go do that? And one way to do that is have the government go out and just basically manage this data set. Now, there's a lot to unpack there, but I think, where I'm going with it is that's one of the things that I see as just a key enabler for any business to then step up and be ahead of their competition. And that's usually what I'm trying to preach to the people I'm working with. Like, this could be a massive value add for you if you craft it in your way and get it in your people's hands so they can use it. So let's think about ways to go do that. Otherwise, you look just like the next contractor and the next contractor, and you may not win this work or be a part of this program.
I love the nerdiness that we've gotten into here. I want to bring us back up a level, and I really want to get us to the megaphone question here. So, we wrap up and we try to give everybody a soapbox to be able to speak to the industry. So if you got a megaphone to speak to the whole industry in about 60 seconds, what would you want to say to them?
I think for me, what I would say after, looking at my career and going through construction and just the sheer amount of people I've met and dealt with and working on good projects and toxic projects, I just really advocate people for find the good in what people are doing and promote it. Be an advocate for other people. When you go to work, you're there 8 hours a day, 10, 12 hours a day. You're around them more than your family. There's so much good people are doing. Like, go be an advocate for people. And I think that sort of advocacy is you quit looking at the glass half, empty, and you look at it half full. Right? And I think that would be a massive change in a lot of different projects and a lot of different way people go execute the world. And then that would be the first 30 seconds, and I'm probably already past it. But then the next 30 seconds would then be plan long. Whether you're an individual in your life, think about your decisions and long-term repercussions. Is this going to be beneficial for me in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years? If you're a small team, look at it from the long term. If you're an organization, look at it for the long term. We just operate in such a short-term world with social media and everything that's out there. Everything's this spin, this short-term, new fad. Start looking at planning long-term, and I think you'll make different decisions and your attitudes will change, which will drive your actions differently. Those would be my two things.
In other words, you won't eat a carton of ice cream because you'll know eventually I'm not going to be healthy.
Well done.
I'm sorry. I was waiting for it.
Well played, my friend.
Hold on. Let me get you glass half full here. Hold on a second. Maybe you were thinking long term and you knew you were going to go run 30 miles next week. So crush that ice cream.
I did need some carbs. I mean,
you needed some carbs.
I needed some carbs.
That's what you needed. Yeah. Yeah. All right. It sounds good. Micah, dude, thank you so much for joining us this week, man. That was awesome.
Yeah. I love what you guys do. There needs to be an advocate for the trades on LinkedIn and in the social media. And I think y'all do a brilliant job of that. So thank you so much for having me, and just keep doing what y'all doing.
Heck yeah, man. Appreciate it.